Princess Zarathul adjusted her crimson battle armor as she stepped into the arena's viewing box, her four eyes scanning the crowd below with practiced disdain. The Galactic Combat Tournament drew warriors from every corner of known space, each species eager to prove their superiority in ritualized combat. As heir to the Vextheri Empire, the most feared military force in 3 spiral arms, she had attended these tournaments since childhood. They served as both entertainment and recruitment opportunities for her father's endless campaigns. The arena itself stretched nearly a kilometer across, its crystalline floor capable of reshaping itself to create any terrain imaginable. Today's configuration resembled the sulphurous wastelands of Keth Prime, complete with bubbling acid pools and jagged obsidian spires. The acidic mist rising from the pools would eat through most armor within minutes, making this particular setup a favorite among spectators who enjoyed watching combatants dissolve slowly. Your Highness, her aide, Commander Thexel, approached with a data tablet clutched in his taloned hands. The preliminary matches have concluded. We have identified several promising candidates for the Imperial Guard. The Krovar Berserker shows exceptional promise, and the cybernetic Xenthian has already dispatched 12 opponents. Zarathul's attention drifted from the commander's report as something unusual caught her eye. In the combatant preparation area, separated from the main arena by energy barriers, stood a figure that seemed completely out of place. Where other warriors performed elaborate warm-up routines, tested weapons, or engaged in intimidation displays, this one simply sat on a supply crate, methodically eating what appeared to be some kind of wrapped food item. The being was bipedal, roughly average height by galactic standards, with pale skin and brown hair that seemed to defy any attempt at military grooming. His clothing consisted of simple, unadorned fabric that looked more suited for manual labor than combat. No visible weapons, no armor, no technological augmentations of any kind. Most peculiar of all, he appeared to be completely relaxed, as if waiting for public transportation rather than preparing for potentially lethal combat. What species is that one? Zarathul pointed with one of her secondary arms toward the strange figure. Commander Thexel followed her gaze, then consulted his tablet with obvious confusion. According to the registration records, he claims to be human? I am unfamiliar with this classification. His homeworld is listed as Earth, which does not appear in any of our stellar cartography databases. Perhaps it is some remote colony world. His combat record? That is where the mystery deepens, Your Highness. He has no recorded military service, no gladiatorial experience, no formal combat training of any kind. The registration system flagged his application as potentially fraudulent, but he passed all the standard biological scans. He is definitely a sentient being, not some elaborate hoax. Zarathul's curiosity was piqued. In her 27 years, she had encountered representatives from nearly every known species. The galaxy was vast, but the intelligent races capable of interstellar travel numbered in the hundreds rather than thousands. New species were discovered perhaps once per decade, usually primitive civilizations just beginning to develop spaceflight. For a completely unknown species to appear at the tournament was unprecedented. What manner of weapons did he register? None, Your Highness. When asked about his preferred armament, he indicated he would use whatever was provided by the arena. Most unusual for a serious competitor. The arena's announcement system crackled to life, the voice of the tournament coordinator echoing across the vast space in the common trade language. Next combatants, prepare for engagement. First match, Gorvok the Destroyer of Kessel 7 versus the human designation Marcus Chun of Earth. A roar erupted from the crowd as Gorvok emerged from the opposite preparation area. The Kesselian stood nearly 3 meters tall, his rock-like hide scarred from countless battles. Primitive clubs and maces hung from his belt, while his massive fists were encased in spiked gauntlets that dripped with some form of paralytic venom. Gorvok had earned his reputation by literally tearing opponents apart with his bare hands, and the betting systems were already showing odds of approximately 1,000 to 1 in his favor. The human called Marcus finished his meal, carefully folded the wrapper, and placed it in what appeared to be a waste disposal unit. He then walked calmly toward the arena entrance, hands clasped behind his back like a scholar taking a pleasant stroll through a garden. "This should be amusing," Commander Thexol remarked, "though perhaps brief. I estimate 17 seconds before the human is reduced to component atoms." The energy barriers separating the preparation area from the arena flickered and disappeared. Gorvok charged forward with a bellow that shook the crystalline floor, his massive frame moving with surprising speed despite his size. The crowd cheered as he covered half the distance to the center of the arena in mere moments. Marcus walked forward at the same unhurried pace, seemingly oblivious to the 3-meter-tall engine of destruction bearing down on him. Several spectators in the lower sections began placing last-minute bets on exactly how the human would die. What happened next would be discussed in fighting circles for generations to come. As Gorvok closed the final few meters, his right fist drew back for a devastating blow that would cave in a normal being's entire torso. Marcus took a single step to his left. The movement was so slight, so economical, that many spectators missed it entirely. Gorvok's fist, moving with enough force to dent battle armor, passed harmlessly through the space where Marcus had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The Caecilian's own momentum carried him forward, and as he stumbled slightly from the missed strike, Marcus reached out and gently touched Gorvok's extended wrist with 2 fingers. The contact lasted perhaps a tenth of a second, but its effects were immediate and dramatic. Gorvok collapsed to the arena floor as if his skeletal structure had suddenly liquefied. A sound escaped his throat that was part scream, part whimper, and entirely unlike anything the legendary berserker had ever produced. He lay there, conscious but unable to move, his eyes wide with what appeared to be absolute terror. The arena fell silent. In the viewing box, Princess Zarathul found herself leaning forward, her diplomatic composure momentarily forgotten. Commander Thexol's data tablet clattered to the floor, its screen cracking against the crystalline surface. Marcus looked down at the paralyzed Caecilian with what might have been mild concern. He knelt beside Gorvok and spoke in a voice barely audible even to the enhanced audio pickups scattered throughout the arena. Whatever he said caused Gorvok to nod frantically, tears streaming down his rock-like features. The human stood, brushed dust from his simple clothing, and walked toward the arena exit. The tournament coordinator's voice stammered through the announcement system, struggling to find words for what had just occurred. Winner, by submission, the human Marcus Chun. The crowd remained silent for several more seconds before erupting into chaos. In the betting sections, several financial institutions immediately declared bankruptcy. Combat analysts frantically reviewed recordings of the match, trying to understand what technique had been employed. Medical teams rushed to assist Gorvok, who was now sobbing uncontrollably despite being apparently uninjured. "Replay the engagement," Zarathul commanded, her voice tight with fascination. Maximum magnification on the point of contact. The viewing box's holographic display activated, showing the brief encounter from multiple angles and at greatly reduced speed. Even with the benefit of slow-motion analysis, the nature of Marcus's technique remained unclear. It appeared to be nothing more than a gentle touch, yet its effect had been more decisive than any weapon. "Your Highness," Commander Thexol had retrieved his damaged tablet and was scrolling through data with increasing agitation. "I have been researching this Earth in our intelligence databases. There are concerning gaps in our knowledge." "Explain." "According to deep space reconnaissance reports, Earth is located in what we classify as Sector 7G, approximately 28,000 light-years from the Imperial core worlds. It is inhabited by a species that appears to have developed spaceflight only within the last century. By all accounts, they should be a primitive civilization barely capable of interplanetary travel. Yet one of them is here, demonstrating combat capabilities that exceed our understanding. Indeed, more troubling still, our intelligence networks show no record of any formal contact between Earth and the galactic community. No trade agreements, no diplomatic missions, no cultural exchanges. If this Marcus Chun is truly from Earth, then his presence here suggests capabilities far beyond what our surveys indicated. In the arena below, Marcus had disappeared into the preparation areas, presumably to await his next match. Gorvok was being carried away on a hover stretcher, still paralyzed, but stable according to the medical team's preliminary reports. The tournament coordinator was consulting with senior officials, clearly uncertain how to proceed with a competition that had just been fundamentally altered by the presence of an unknown factor. Zarathal's mind raced through the implications. If Earth possessed technology or techniques unknown to the galactic community, it represented either an unprecedented opportunity or a potential threat to the established order. Her father's empire had been built on superior military technology and technique. The appearance of capabilities that exceeded their understanding was troubling, to say the least. Commander, I want a complete intelligence assessment of this Earth within the hour. Contact our deep space assets and redirect any available reconnaissance ships to that sector. I want to know everything about this species and their capabilities. At once, Your Highness. What of the human in the arena? Zarathal considered this carefully. Direct contact carried risks, but the potential intelligence value was enormous. Arrange a private meeting after his next match. I will speak with this Marcus Chun personally. The tournament continued, but Zarathal's attention remained fixed on the preparation areas. Through the reinforced viewing panels, she could occasionally glimpse the human sitting calmly among the other combatants. While warriors from dozens of species performed elaborate rituals, tested weapons, or engaged in psychological warfare against their upcoming opponents, Marcus appeared to be reading something on a small personal device. His next opponent was announced as Vexkull, the Mind Ripper, a psion from the Twilight Nebula, whose telepathic abilities had driven 17 previous opponents to permanent insanity. The crowd cheered as Vexkull emerged, his translucent form flickering between dimensions while waves of psychic energy caused sensitive individuals in the audience to experience severe headaches. Marcus closed his device, stood up, and walked toward the arena entrance with the same casual demeanor he had shown before. As he passed other combatants, Zarathal noticed something that sent a chill down her spine. Every single one of them moved aside to give him space. Not in the obvious, frightened way that weak beings avoided dangerous predators, but with the subtle, unconscious deference that apex predators showed to something even more dangerous than themselves. The most unnerving part was that Marcus seemed completely unaware of their reactions. He walked among some of the galaxy's most feared warriors, as if they were office workers stepping aside for someone carrying coffee. The casualness of it suggested that inspiring such reactions was so natural to him that he no longer noticed when it happened. As the energy barriers dropped for the second match, Princess Zarathal realized that her understanding of the galactic hierarchy was about to be fundamentally challenged. Whatever these humans were, they were not the primitive species her intelligence services had believed them to be. The question was whether they were potential allies or the greatest threat her empire had ever faced. She suspected she was about to find out. Vexkull, the Mind Ripper, materialized fully into the physical dimension as the match began, his form solidifying into something resembling a humanoid composed of living shadow and crackling energy. Psychic waves emanated from his being in visible distortions, causing the arena's crystalline floor to develop stress fractures in geometric patterns. Several spectators in the lower sections clutched their heads in pain, and the tournament's medical team activated emergency psychic shielding throughout the facility. Marcus walked into the arena as if entering an empty room, hands still clasped behind his back. The psychic assault that had already incapacitated dozens of spectators seemed to pass through him without effect, like water flowing around a stone. Impossible, Commander Thexol whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. Psions of Vexkull's caliber can shatter mind across star systems. The human should be experiencing complete cognitive breakdown. Princess Zarathal remained silent, her four eyes focused intently on the scene below. In her years of studying warfare and combat techniques, she had learned to recognize when conventional understanding no longer applied. This was clearly such a moment. Vexcol seemed equally puzzled by Marcus's immunity to his mental attacks. The Psion intensified his assault, his form brightening until he resembled a miniature star. The psychic pressure was now so intense that even the heavily shielded viewing boxes experienced warning alerts. Several alien dignitaries in the premium sections evacuated their positions, unable to tolerate the mental intrusion even through multiple layers of protection. Marcus continued walking forward at the same measured pace, apparently unaffected by forces that should have reduced his consciousness to basic survival instincts. When he reached the center of the arena, he stopped and waited patiently, as if giving Vexcol time to finish whatever he was attempting. The Psion's confidence began to crack. For the first time in his career, his mental attacks were proving completely ineffective. He shifted to a more direct approach, manifesting psychic constructs in the form of razor-sharp energy blades that materialized around Marcus in a deadly sphere. Each blade was capable of cutting through military-grade armor, and they moved with the speed of thought itself. Marcus tilted his head slightly, the gesture so subtle it might have been mistaken for mild curiosity. The energy blades, moving at tremendous velocity toward their target, simply stopped. Not destroyed, not deflected, but frozen in space as if time itself had been paused around them. By the void, Commander Thexol breathed. He is not using any technology. No energy signatures, no field generation, no quantum manipulation. The human is accomplishing this through purely biological means. The blades began to dissolve, their psychic energy dissipating harmlessly into the arena's atmosphere. Vexcol's form flickered with panic as he realized the magnitude of what he faced. A being immune to psychic attack, capable of neutralizing energy constructs through unknown means, and demonstrating a level of calm that suggested this was routine for him. Marcus took 3 steps forward, closing half the distance between himself and the increasingly desperate Psion. Vexcol attempted to phase back into the dimensional void, his species' ultimate escape mechanism when faced with overwhelming opposition. The human reached out with one hand and touched empty air where Vexcol had been standing. The Psion materialized instantly, his translucent form becoming solid and remaining that way. Whatever Marcus had done had somehow anchored him to the physical dimension, preventing any further attempts at dimensional travel. "Surrender," Marcus said, the single word carrying clearly across the arena despite being spoken in a conversational tone. "Please." The politeness of the request somehow made it more terrifying than any threat could have been. Vexcol collapsed to his knees, his form stabilizing completely as he abandoned all resistance. The great Mindripper, scourge of 17 star systems, had been reduced to a cowering figure through methods no one in the arena could begin to understand. Marcus nodded approvingly, helped Vexcol to his feet with gentle courtesy, and escorted him toward the medical stations. The Psion walked beside him like a confused child, all traces of his former menace completely gone. The crowd's reaction was more subdued this time, but the tension was palpable. Word of the first match had spread throughout the arena complex, and spectators were beginning to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. Several high-ranking military officials had already left their seats, presumably to report these events to their respective governments. "Your Highness," Commander Thexol consulted his repaired tablet with shaking hands. "Initial intelligence reports from Earth are disturbing. Continue. Our deep space reconnaissance units have been monitoring Earth for standard resource assessment and potential colonization evaluation. According to their reports, the planet shows signs of a civilization that has recently developed nuclear technology and basic spaceflight. Primitive by galactic standards, with no apparent means of faster-than-light travel. Yet we have evidence to the contrary standing in that arena. Indeed, more concerning still, Our reconnaissance assets report that Earth appears to be under some form of advanced protection. Several probe ships have experienced catastrophic system failures when attempting close-range scans of the planet. The failures appear to be technological in nature, but no defensive installations or energy signatures have been detected. Princess Zarathul processed this information while watching Marcus return to the preparation area. Other combatants moved aside for him again, but now she noticed something additional in their behavior. It was not just deference they were showing, but recognition. These were beings from across the galaxy, representing dozens of different species, yet they all seemed to understand instinctively that Marcus represented something far beyond their capabilities. How many of our reconnaissance ships have we lost in that sector? 7 confirmed destroyed, 12 missing, and presumed lost. High Command has classified the Earth system as off-limits pending further evaluation. 19 ships lost investigating a supposedly primitive planet. Zarathul's voice carried the chill that had made her father's enemies learn to fear the Vextheri imperial family. Either our intelligence capabilities have deteriorated beyond acceptable parameters, or we are dealing with a civilization that has mastered the art of appearing harmless while possessing capabilities that exceed our own. The tournament coordinator announced the next match, but Zarathul paid little attention. Her strategic mind was working through possibilities and implications at tremendous speed. If Earth possessed defensive capabilities that could destroy Imperial reconnaissance vessels without detection, what other abilities might they have? Were the humans deliberately concealing their true nature, or was Marcus an anomaly among his people? Commander, I want you to personally review every piece of data we have collected about Earth. Cross-reference it with our files on extinct civilizations, lost colonies, and theoretical advanced technologies. Someone capable of what we just witnessed does not develop in isolation. There must be connections we are missing. At once, Your Highness, what of your planned meeting with a human? Zarathul considered this carefully. Direct contact now carried significantly more risk than she had initially calculated, but the potential intelligence value had increased proportionally. Proceed with the arrangements, but implement maximum security protocols. If this Marcus Chun represents a fraction of his species' capabilities, we must assume he is far more dangerous than he appears. In the preparation area below, Marcus had resumed his position on the supply crate and was once again eating. The casual nature of his behavior was beginning to take on sinister implications. Either he was genuinely unaware of the fear and respect he was inspiring, or he was so accustomed to being the most dangerous thing in any given situation that he no longer paid attention to the reactions of others. The third match was announced, pairing Marcus against Kethmore the Warblade, a cybernetic Xenthian whose body had been almost entirely replaced with military-grade combat augmentations. Kethmore's record showed 73 victories without a single defeat, and his integrated weapon systems were capable of engaging multiple opponents simultaneously across several different spectra of combat. As the energy barriers dropped, Kethmore emerged in a display of technological superiority that drew appreciative murmurs from the crowd. His form was humanoid, but clearly artificial, with visible weapon ports, targeting systems, and energy conduits running throughout his frame. Advanced sensors tracked multiple potential threats, while his onboard computer systems calculated optimal attack patterns. Marcus finished his meal, disposed of the wrapper with the same careful attention to tidiness he had shown before, and walked into the arena. Kethmore's sensors immediately began tracking him, and the Xenthian's combat computer started generating tactical assessments based on the human's movement patterns and apparent capabilities. What happened next defied every principle of advanced combat analysis. Kethmore raised his right arm, revealing an energy cannon capable of generating plasma bursts that could vaporize armored vehicles. The weapon charged with a distinctive whine that carried across the arena, targeting systems locking onto Marcus with mechanical precision. The human was now well within optimal firing range, with no cover available and no apparent means of defense. Marcus looked directly at the energy cannon for the first time, his expression showing what might have been mild interest. He raised his right hand and made a small gesture, as if waving at a distant acquaintance. The energy cannon exploded. Not fired and missed, not overloaded and shut down, but violently disintegrated in a cascade of sparks and molten metal. Kethmore staggered backward as his integrated systems registered catastrophic failure in his primary weapon system. Emergency protocols activated, attempting to isolate the damage and prevent it from spreading to other components. Marcus continued walking forward, seemingly oblivious to the technological crisis he had somehow caused. Kethmore activated his secondary weapon systems, deploying razor-wire projectiles, sonic disruptors, and electromagnetic pulse generators in a desperate attempt to stop the advancing human. Each weapon system failed in turn, not overwhelmed or defeated in combat, but simply ceased to function as Marcus approached. His integrated computer, worth more than most planetary defense budgets, began displaying error messages in languages that should not have existed in its memory banks. By the time Marcus reached arm's length, Kethmore was effectively a statue of non-functional metal and circuitry. The cybernetic warrior had been reduced to basic biological functions, his artificial enhancements rendered useless through methods that registered as impossible on every sensor in the arena. Marcus reached out and touched Kethmore's chest plate with one finger. The Xenthian's remaining biological components immediately shut down into what appeared to be a peaceful sleep. He toppled backward, his mechanical form clattering against the crystalline floor, but his breathing remained steady and regular. Winner by technical knockout, Marcus Chun of Earth. The announcement was delivered in a voice that carried none of the enthusiasm typical of tournament coverage. The coordinator was clearly struggling to maintain professional composure while witnessing events that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. Princess Zarathul realized her hands were gripping the viewing box railing hard enough to leave permanent impressions in the metal. The display of power she had just witnessed was not simply beyond her understanding. It was beyond the understanding of galactic civilization itself. Technology that had taken millennia to develop was being casually negated by biological capabilities that should not have been possible. Your Highness, Commander Thexol's voice was barely above a whisper. I believe we may have severely underestimated the nature of the threat this represents. Indeed. Cancel the meeting. We will observe from a distance and gather what intelligence we can, but direct contact is now out of the question until we better understand what we are dealing with. But even as she spoke, Zarathul knew that understanding might be beyond their capabilities. Whatever the humans truly were, they operated according to principles that the greatest minds in the galaxy had yet to discover. The question was no longer whether they were allies or enemies, but whether the rest of galactic civilization would survive the discovery of their existence. In the arena below, Marcus was helping the unconscious Kethmore to the medical station with the same gentle courtesy he had shown his previous opponents. The medical team approached cautiously, unsure whether their equipment would function properly in the human's presence. As Marcus departed, their instruments resumed normal operation, allowing them to confirm that Kethmore was merely sleeping and would awaken unharmed. The tournament would continue, but everyone present understood that they had witnessed the emergence of something that would change the balance of power throughout known space. The only question was what the humans intended to do with capabilities that made the greatest military forces in the galaxy appear primitive by comparison. The tournament had been suspended for emergency deliberations after Marcus's third victory. In the private conference chambers beneath the arena, representatives from 12 major galactic powers had convened for an unprecedented emergency session. Princess Zarathul sat at the head of the obsidian table, her imperial authority granting her the right to chair such gatherings, though the weight of what they had witnessed pressed heavily upon everyone present. The situation is untenable, declared Admiral Grextar of the Cronin Federation, his scaled hide rippling with agitation. We have observed capabilities that render our military doctrine obsolete. If this human represents the standard for his species, then every defensive strategy in known space has become worthless. Perhaps we are overreacting, suggested Ambassador Yilmeth from the Centauri Alliance, though her voice lacked conviction. He could be an anomaly among his people, a mutation or genetically enhanced individual. Surely an entire species could not possess such abilities. Commander Thexol activated the holographic display at the center of the table, showing the compiled intelligence data his teams had gathered over the past several hours. Unfortunately, Ambassador, our analysis suggests otherwise. We have now identified 17 separate instances over the past decade where human vessels have been reported in various sectors of space. In each case, the encounters were brief, and the humans departed without engaging in hostilities, but the circumstances are revealing. The display showed star charts marking each reported encounter. In the Vega system, a human ship was observed passing through a Dominator patrol fleet without being detected by their sensors. The Dominator's stealth detection capabilities are among the most advanced in known space. In the Rigel sector, a human craft approached a Harvester world ship during active feeding operations. The Harvesters, who consume entire planets for sustenance, immediately ceased their operations and departed the system. Impossible, breathed General Korthak of the Hegemony. The Harvesters have never been observed to alter their feeding patterns for any reason. They have ignored direct military action against them, showing no fear of conventional weapons. Yet they fled from a single human vessel, Commander Thexol confirmed. Similar patterns emerge from every reported encounter. Species that have never shown deference to anyone respond to human presence with immediate withdrawal. It suggests they recognize something we have failed to understand. Princess Zarathul studied the data while her mind worked through the strategic implications. What do we know about these human ships? Technology, weapons, defensive capabilities? That is where our intelligence becomes most concerning, Your Highness. According to all sensor readings, the human vessels appear to use primitive propulsion systems, basic metals for construction, and no detectable weapons or shielding. Yet they travel between star systems with apparent ease and no regard for the territorial boundaries that constrain the rest of us. They are either using technology so advanced we cannot detect it, or Admiral Grekstar's voice trailed off as he considered the alternative. Or they require no technology at all, Zarathul finished. If the human in the arena represents normal capabilities for his species, then they may not need artificial enhancements to accomplish what the rest of us require vast technological infrastructures to achieve. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every being in the chamber represented civilizations that had spent millennia developing increasingly sophisticated technology to overcome the limitations of biology. The possibility that such technology might be unnecessary was more than unsettling. It was existentially threatening to their understanding of reality itself. We need more information, declared Ambassador Yilmeth. Someone must make contact with this human and attempt to learn more about his people's capabilities and intentions. I volunteer, Zarathul said, surprising everyone at the table. As the highest-ranking individual present, diplomatic contact falls within my authority. If the humans prove hostile, my death will serve as sufficient warning to our respective governments. Your Highness, the risk Commander Thexol began. The risk of ignorance outweighs the risk of contact, she interrupted. We are dealing with a species that has demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding while showing no overt hostility. If they intended to eliminate us, I suspect they would have done so already. Our best chance of survival may lie in establishing communication before they decide we represent a threat to be removed. The debate continued for another hour, but Zarathul's logic proved sound. Contact was inevitable. The only question was whether it would occur under controlled circumstances or during some future crisis when a human's patience might have worn thin. As the emergency session concluded, Zarathul made her way to the arena's lower levels where Marcus had been provided with private quarters during the tournament suspension. Her escort consisted of her most trusted guards, though she harbored no illusions about their ability to protect her if the human proved hostile. The energy weapons and advanced armor that had served her well throughout her military career now seemed as primitive as stone spears. The corridor leading to Marcus's quarters was eerily quiet. Other tournament participants had been moved to different sections of the facility, leaving this area effectively deserted. As they approached the designated room, Zarathul noticed that her guards were becoming increasingly agitated, though they were too professional to voice their concerns aloud. "Wait here," she instructed them as they reached the door. "If I do not emerge within 1 hour, report to Commander Thexel and implement evacuation protocols for all Imperial personnel." The guards' expressions made it clear they considered this assignment tantamount to suicide, but they took their positions without protest. Zarathul activated the door's communication system and requested permission to enter. Of course, came Marcus's voice, carrying the same casual friendliness he had displayed in the arena. "Come in, please." The door slid open to reveal quarters that had been transformed in subtle but significant ways. The standard military furnishings remained, but Marcus had somehow made the space feel comfortable and welcoming despite its utilitarian design. He sat at the room's small table, where he appeared to be working on some form of three-dimensional puzzle made from materials she could not identify. "Your Highness," he said, rising to greet her with a polite nod. "I was wondering when someone would come to talk. I hope you don't mind the modifications." He gestured toward what had once been a bare metal chair, which now somehow possessed cushions that had definitely not been there originally. "I took the liberty of making things a bit more comfortable." Zarathul realized she was staring. The cushions were not technological illusions or advanced materials. They were simply there, as if they had always existed. "How did you dash?" "Oh, that." Marcus smiled sheepishly. "Force of habit, I suppose. I've never been comfortable with unnecessary discomfort, if that makes sense." "Please sit. Would you like some tea?" She looked around the room again, noting the absence of any beverage preparation equipment. "You have tea?" "I do now." He moved to what had been an empty corner and returned with a steaming cup made from what appeared to be handcrafted ceramic. The liquid within smelled of herbs she could not identify, but found immediately appealing. "It's a blend from home. Nothing exotic, just something I find relaxing." Princess Zarathul accepted the cup with hands that she was annoyed to discover were trembling slightly. The ceramic was warm against her palms, and the tea's aroma seemed to ease tension she had not realized she was carrying. "Marcus Chun, I am Princess Zarathul of the Vexthari Empire. I have come to discuss your performance in the arena." "Performance seems like the wrong word," Marcus said, settling back into his chair. "I was just participating in the tournament like everyone else, though I admit I may have gotten a bit carried away. I hope I didn't hurt anyone too badly." The casual way he discussed defeating 3 of the galaxy's most feared warriors was more unsettling than any threat could have been. "The combatants you faced are recovering, but their defeat raises questions about your capabilities and those of your species." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I can understand that. Humans do tend to have that effect on people when they first encounter us. We're not trying to be intimidating, but sometimes our natural abilities come across that way to other species." "Natural abilities," Zarathul repeated carefully. "What you demonstrated in the arena exceeded the capabilities of advanced technology. You speak of them as if they are commonplace among your people." "Well, they are. Everyone back home can do pretty much the same things I can do. Some are better at specific applications, of course. My friend Sarah is much better with electronic systems than I am, and my neighbor Tom has always had a gift for working with living things. But the basic abilities are universal." The implication struck Zarathul like a physical blow. An entire species possessing capabilities that made galactic civilization's greatest achievements appear primitive. "How many humans are there?" "Oh, I'm not sure of the exact count. Last I heard we were approaching 9 billion, but that was a few years ago. The population has been growing steadily. 9 billion beings with abilities that could neutralize advanced military technology through casual gestures." Princess Zarathul felt her worldview restructuring itself around this new reality. Every strategic assumption she had ever made was based on technology being the ultimate arbiter of power. If biology could exceed technological capabilities, then the entire foundation of galactic civilization was built on sand. Why have your people not made contact with the galactic community? With your capabilities, you could easily establish dominance over known space. Marcus looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Why would one do that? We have everything we need on Earth. The few of us who travel to other systems usually do so out of curiosity or for specific research purposes. Conquering other people has never held much appeal for us. But surely you understand the advantage your abilities provide, the power they represent. I suppose so, but power over others has always struck me as more trouble than it's worth. It's much easier to simply live peacefully and help people when they need it. He paused, studying her expression with obvious concern. I hope my participation in the tournament has not caused problems for you personally. I was not trying to create difficulties. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but it only made the situation more surreal. She was having a polite conversation with someone who could probably dismantle her entire fleet with nothing more than good intentions and gentle gestures. Marcus, what are your people's intentions regarding the rest of galactic civilization? Do you plan to make formal contact? That's well above my level of authority, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. I'm just a botanist who enjoys traveling. The people who make those kinds of decisions are much smarter than I am. Though from what I understand, they're generally in favor of peaceful coexistence with anyone who wants it. And if someone were to threaten Earth or humanity, for the first time since she had entered the room, Marcus's expression became serious. That would be unfortunate. We've never had to deal with that situation before, so I'm not sure exactly what would happen. But I imagine the response will be proportionate to the threat. The understated way he delivered what amounted to a warning chilled Zarathul to her core. 9 billion beings with reality-altering capabilities, all presumably sharing Marcus's calm demeanor and preference for peace. The galaxy's most aggressive militaries would not even register as a minor annoyance to such a species. I should probably mention, Marcus continued, that my presence here has not gone unnoticed back home. There are others keeping an eye on things just to make sure everything goes smoothly. They're not interfering, but they are aware. Princess Zarathul realized that her private meeting with a human was probably being observed by beings whose capabilities exceeded even Marcus's. The thought that invisible watchers with godlike powers were monitoring their conversation was almost paralyzing. How many others? She managed to ask. Oh, just a few. Earth takes a very light touch with these things. We don't like to be intrusive. He paused, then added with the same casual tone, though I should mention that they might step in if they perceive a threat to galactic stability. Humans generally prefer peaceful solutions to problems. The warning was delivered with such gentle courtesy that it took several seconds for its full implications to register. Earth was not just aware of galactic civilization. They were actively monitoring it for stability. They had positioned themselves as guardians of peace throughout known space, with the power to enforce their preferences if necessary. Princess Zarathul found herself facing the most important diplomatic moment in galactic history, and she was completely unprepared for it. The weight of Marcus's casual revelation hung in the air between them like a singularity, warping the reality of everything Princess Zarathul had believed about galactic power structures. She took a sip of the impossibly perfect tea, using the moment to gather her thoughts while studying this unassuming being who had just informed her that humanity was actively monitoring galactic civilization. When you say they monitor for stability, she began carefully, what exactly does that mean? Marcus set down his own cup and leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. Well, we've noticed that intelligent species tend to go through certain phases as they develop. Early on, there's usually lots of conflict as different groups figure out how to coexist. Then, they typically expand outward, sometimes coming into contact with other developing civilizations. That can go well or not so well. And humanity intervenes when it goes not so well. We prefer not to intervene directly, Marcus clarified. Usually, things work themselves out naturally. Species learn from their mistakes, develop better systems, find ways to coexist peacefully. But sometimes situations arise that could threaten not just the species involved, but the stability of entire regions of space. Princess Zarathul thought of her father's empire, built on conquest and maintained through superior military technology. Define threatening to stability. Oh, the usual things. Attempts to wipe out entire species, weapons that could damage star systems, artificial intelligences that decide biological life is unnecessary. Things that could cause cascading problems across multiple civilizations. Marcus spoke as if discussing weather patterns rather than galactic catastrophes. Most species never get close to that level of destructive capability, but occasionally someone develops technology or philosophies that could cause widespread damage. And in those cases, we step in. His tone remained gentle, but Zarathul detected something beneath the surface that made her instincts scream warnings about apex predators. Usually a conversation is sufficient. Sometimes we need to remove specific individuals or technologies. In extreme cases, he shrugged. Well, we've never had an extreme case, so I'm not sure what that would look like. The implications crystallized in Zarathul's mind with terrifying clarity. Humanity was not just monitoring galactic civilization, they were actively curating it. Species that developed in directions humans deemed acceptable were allowed to continue. Those that exceeded human tolerance for destructive behavior were corrected. How long have your people been doing this? Oh, quite a while now. Thousands of years, at least. It started small, just keeping an eye on our immediate neighbors. But as we developed better ways of traveling between stars, we expanded our area of interest. Now we monitor most of the galaxy, though the outer spiral arms are still largely left to develop on their own. Thousands of years, humanity had been shepherding galactic development since before most current civilizations had achieved spaceflight. Every major historical event, every rise and fall of empires, every technological breakthrough had occurred under human observation. The galaxy's entire history was a managed process. The Dominator War, she said suddenly, thinking of the massive conflict that had raged across 12 systems a century ago before the aggressors mysteriously disappeared. The Dominators had developed planet-killer weapons. Marcus nodded. That was unfortunate. They had some very advanced technology, but their philosophy was incompatible with galactic stability. We tried talking with their leadership, but they were convinced that only they deserved to survive. Eventually, we had to relocate them. Relocate them where? Oh, somewhere safe where they can work through their issues without threatening anyone else. It's a nice place, actually. Good climate, plenty of resources, room to grow. We check on them periodically to see how they're progressing. Princess Zarathul realized her mouth was hanging open. The Dominators, whose technology had been feared across known space, had been removed from the galaxy by humans and relocated like problem children being sent to their room. The casual way Marcus discussed it suggested this was routine procedure. The Vextheri Empire, she said slowly. Where do we stand in terms of galactic stability? Marcus considered this question with obvious care. Your father's empire has shown some concerning trends recently. The expansion campaigns, the subjugation of lesser species, the development of increasingly destructive weapons. It's not at crisis levels yet, but it's being watched closely. The teacup slipped from Zarathul's suddenly, nerveless fingers, but instead of shattering against the floor, it simply stopped in midair and gently returned to her hands. Marcus had not moved, had not even looked in the cup's direction, but reality had bent itself to prevent a minor mess. What would it take, she asked in a voice that barely qualified as a whisper, to move from concerning trends to requiring intervention? Well, that depends on several factors. Intent, capability, and willingness to change course when problems are pointed out. Marcus's expression became more serious. The good news is that you're here asking these questions. that suggests a level of self-awareness and concern for consequences that we find encouraging. And if my father continues his current policies, then eventually someone will have a conversation with him. Hopefully, he'll be receptive to suggestions for alternative approaches. Most leaders are, once they understand the broader context of their actions. Princess Zarathul thought of her father, whose pride and ambition had driven the empire's expansion for decades. The idea of him being receptive to suggestions from anyone was almost laughable. What if he is not receptive? Then, we would explore other options. Perhaps working with others in your government who have different perspectives. Sometimes removing specific individuals from positions of authority is sufficient. In rare cases, we might need to provide your people with alternative leadership structures entirely. The casual way Marcus discussed overthrowing galactic empires was more terrifying than any military threat could have been. He spoke of toppling governments as if it were a minor administrative task, no more significant than reorganizing office furniture. Marcus, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, what exactly are humans? Your capabilities exceed anything we understand about the physical universe. You speak of reshaping galactic civilization as if it were a hobby project. We're your people. For the first time since she had entered the room, Marcus seemed uncertain how to respond. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. That's a complicated question, he finally said. We started as a fairly typical species, I suppose. Biological evolution on a single planet, developing intelligence and technology in the usual way. But we took some different paths along the way. Instead of relying entirely on external tools, we focused on developing our internal capabilities. Mental discipline, physical optimization, understanding the fundamental forces that govern reality. You evolved beyond the need for technology. Not beyond the need, exactly. We still use tools when they're appropriate. But we learned that consciousness itself could interact with the basic structures of reality in ways that most species never explore. Once you understand how matter and energy actually work, manipulating them becomes relatively straightforward. Princess Zarathul tried to wrap her mind around the concept of an entire species that had transcended the need for artificial enhancement. Why have you not shared this knowledge with other civilizations? We have selectively, but most species need to reach a certain level of mental and social development before the knowledge becomes useful rather than dangerous. Giving reality manipulation abilities to a civilization that has not learned to control aggression and tribalism would be problematic. And when do species typically reach that level of development? Marcus smiled sadly. Most never do. Intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing, and the kind of wisdom required for safe use of advanced capabilities is relatively rare. That's why we maintain the monitoring programs. Better to guide development gradually than to risk catastrophic mistakes. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Humanity had achieved something approaching godhood and appointed themselves guardians of galactic development. They allowed other species to advance according to their own nature, but only within parameters that prevented galaxy-threatening catastrophes. The Vexthari Empire, with its aggressive expansion and increasingly destructive military technology, was approaching those parameters. What happens now, she asked. That depends on you, Marcus replied. You have an opportunity to influence your empire's direction before external intervention becomes necessary. The question is whether you're willing to use that opportunity. Princess Zarathul understood the choice being offered. She could return to her father with warnings about humanity's capabilities and hope he would choose diplomacy over confrontation. Or she could work to change the empire's policies from within, potentially preventing a crisis that would end in their civilization being relocated to whatever gentle prison the humans had devised for problematic species. If I were to work toward policy changes within the empire, would humanity be willing to provide guidance? Not interference, but advice? Of course. We much prefer working with local leadership when possible. Change is always more stable when it comes from within rather than being imposed from outside. A soft chime indicated that her allotted meeting time was approaching its end. Zarathul rose from her chair, her mind already racing through the political calculations necessary to redirect an empire without triggering the very crisis she was trying to prevent. "Marcus, will I see you again?" "Probably not," he said with genuine regret. "I'm planning to head home after the tournament ends. But others will be available if you need assistance or guidance. We're always happy to help when we can." As she reached the door, Zarathul turned back for one final question. "The tournament. Why did you really participate?" Marcus grinned, and for a moment he looked exactly like what he claimed to be, a botanist on vacation who had decided to try something new. "Honestly, it looked like fun, and I was curious about galactic combat techniques. I learned quite a bit." Princess Zarathul left the room knowing that her life, her empire, and galactic civilization itself had been fundamentally changed by a conversation with someone who considered reality-bending combat abilities a form of entertainment. As she walked back through the corridors toward her waiting guards, she began planning the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. The fate of the Vextheri Empire and potentially every other civilization in known space would depend on her ability to convince her father that the apex predators of the galaxy were not those with the largest fleets or most advanced weapons. They were a species of gardeners who had learned to tend reality itself, and who viewed the rest of galactic civilization as a garden that needed careful cultivation to reach its full potential. The question was whether the garden would accept their guidance, or require more direct intervention to prevent it from destroying itself. Behind her, Marcus returned to his puzzle, humming quietly to himself as he manipulated pieces that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the room should have been able to contain. He appeared completely unaware that he had just delivered an ultimatum that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. Or perhaps, Princess Zarathul realized as she rejoined her guards, that was exactly how ultimatums from apex predators were supposed to be delivered.